Good. So good afternoon, everyone. This will be a product talk and talk about keeping the focus. Currently, we are living in a moment where you have the best possibility to get a lot of feedback from the users or consumers or people in the world in order for you to understand if you actually are making something worthwhile, interesting, valuable. What I often find problematic when working with startups or small companies is that they easily get lost with many millions of ideas, which means that they start to proving their point just by getting whatever information or data could back up their thinking. The other thing is that, especially software development, the software development processes are and have developed greatly. And yet, many software developers or game developers, when focusing on users or players or customers, they are thinking of focus groups or surveys or market studies. And I'm very tired of seeing these like hockey stick ideas that, okay, this is the market and the market will be massive after 2 years. And we are actually getting there by some magic powers. With surveys or focus groups, I don't think so. So I'm a very practical person myself, so I'm actually going through a process of how to make sure that you actually keep the focus. By the way, I'm also going to get into the methods more deeply at the hackathon. So if someone is joining the hackathon, I will be giving a workshop where we actually dig deeper into those issues. A few words about Unity. Actually, the story or the beginning of Unity is a nice story. So there were 3 guys wanted to make a game. And as a game developer, if any of you is a game developer, you know that you have the best idea. This will be the greatest game ever. Also, those 3 guys think of that. And then when they got the game done, well, it wasn't that good. But the important thing is to focus in that point, either iterating what you have or pivoting, or figuring out, okay, what do you actually have? Okay, they had the engine. That was 10 years ago. Now Unity is the most commonly used development environment, so game engine and editor, and a set of services for game developers. Okay, there are some images of games that use Unity. Hearthstone is, or City Skylines are one of the very massive hits. And also, the Jungle Book movie is actually made with Unity. The reason why I want to show our mission, or these 3 things that are very heavily in the focus when we create products at Unity, is that when you think of yourself as a founder of a startup, you should also think, okay, how can big companies help you in doing something? One of the mission Unity has is to enable success, so that's why we have the free editor, for example, for game developers. Unity is not the only big company who can provide value to you, not only by acquiring your company, but also providing possibilities or tools for you to succeed. Just a few numbers, not super relevant, but yes, we are big. Yes, we have a lot of successful partners or games using Unity. But I think the more important is that, yes, we have successes, but we also love indies or small startups, companies or game studios that are in the very early phase of their journey. And that actually leads to the previous point of being in 30% of top 1,000 crossing games on the market. Okay, but that's about brief introduction about what Unity is, and now let's get into the topic, which is how do you keep laser-sharp focus, how do you utilize the crowd, how do you reach out, how do you get information, how do you actually quicker find right answers or good enough answers to make valuable business or growth your business. Okay, this is from Steve Jobs, but this could also be my words. What I already said, that it's, okay, Steve puts it that way, that it's really hard to focus, design products by focus groups, as people don't know what they actually want. And that's the same thing with surveys or with market studies. Market studies or the projections are, well, they are guesses basically. And if you go to ask friends or people at the university or random people on the street if they would like this or that, well, you will get some sort of an answer, but usually people can't come up with new ideas or validate your thinking just by looking at what you have. The other problem is that if you just try to use market research, well, yes, you'll get information, but there's a lot of things you don't know. And there's even more things you even don't know because there's no information available. So you don't, if you do a focus group or survey, you don't get that information. As also your target audience or potential customers, they don't know either. As I said, I'm a very practical person, so I'm actually going through a process how to focus and make sure that you actually are focusing on right things. Often at this point people say that, okay, yes, well, like you have Masquerade. It didn't take too long. You don't have to have any fancy processes or methods to figure out who is the audience. In Finland we also have, in the games industry for example, we have Rovio and Supercell. Yes, they don't need it, but we also have 200 other companies in the games industry. They don't have similar successes. And for them, it would be more valuable to actually focus on how do you figure out what's your unique selling point or what's special in your product in order to actually compete on the global market. So, no secret sauces, but keep in mind that there's a lot of things changing at the moment. So not only software development processes, like everyone going to agile in different ways, but it's also about from profiles or figuring out what your user is to actually involve the users. And that doesn't really cost that much of anything. You have internet and you have different other ways or communities to leverage. One of the challenge is that people have sort of a tunnel vision. So especially like when you're creating a product, you love your product, you love your company, and usually you try to make sure that, okay, whatever I do, everything will strengthen my thinking. So if I have an idea that, okay, this is like my ideas are the right ones, you try to figure out, okay, how do you basically make sure that everyone backs up your thinking. The challenge with this like tunnel vision or focusing on routines and I want to believe thinking is to do a number of things. There are actually 4 steps. This is the first step that's surprisingly often not that well considered by companies or startups. Simple things like, goal. Usually the goal for many is that, okay, we want to rule the world or we want to disrupt whatever industry. That's totally fine. But I think the Masquerade, one of the answers was actually a good one in the sense that they said that, okay, their idea was way bigger, but because of the time constraint of hackathon, 48 hours, they had to do something smaller, and actually that smaller got them going. there are different ways of making sure that you don't wander around without clear goal. One of the methods I actually like is Simon Sinek's why. So like if you think of Unity, what we do an engine, game engine, an editor and services. But why do we do it? Well, for developers, we want to help developers to succeed, well, enable them to succeed or democratize game development. Those are the things. So it's not about the engine, it's about like what do we actually want to do. But so 3 steps. Why? And Simon Sinek, that's just one way of looking at it, but try to pinpoint what do you actually, what's the value for whoever you are focusing on. Focus on key metrics. Too often you just, because there is like, you can track any data, so many also track all the data and you don't know what to focus on. I would say that, okay, pirate metrics is a good start. Figure out, okay, what's the habit and what is the habit you want to change. And flow moments, canvases are a fantastic way to shrink your thinking into very sort of a structured way. That's a lean growth canvas, but you could also use the value proposition canvas. So there are different options for that. But the nice thing about canvas is that there is only the A4 space for you and the product. The number 2 is involve and ask questions. So as said, like, of course you can do surveys if you want to do surveys, but that doesn't necessarily help you that much. One of the, again, there are many ways. This is one example. So having a swarm, so a group of people, random people that you involve. So you have a version 1, you figure out where to get relevant people to give comments to your idea. Based on those comments and of course your thinking, you go to the next version. You continue with the same group or find a new one if you want to test different types of crowd or different type of people if in a case you don't necessarily know what type of your target audience might be. Again, collect feedback, whatever you got, move to the version 3. That's one way of involving users. So instead of just like create something or make a survey and then create something, you can involve users in a very cheap way to give feedback. Then someone might say that, okay, but yes, we have all these secrets and very special, unique ideas. Well, I can tell you that most likely not. And even if you do, it's not necessarily that thing that will, be the make it or break it thing. So don't be shy. Try to, communicate and talk to as many as possible. The step 3 is layer thinking. With this, I mean that too often many product developers just try their ideas with one method. Whereas, and this is, by the way, what I'm using, so I know that this works very nicely, is that you basically use different methods in a row. So if you have a problem, so something in your product that you want to change or improve, use a method, whatever you basically pick. There are loads of, and this stuff we actually go into the workshop or the hackathon workshop. But the point is that after you have used that, that's not the conclusion. That's basically things on top of your head or on top of the user's or customer's head. After that, you should basically learn from that and move to next one and next one in order to actually crystallize what's relevant. And as I say, like, there are so many methods. I don't mean that you need to bring up any new methods or new thinking or new processes. This is more about utilizing the existing methods or existing process more efficiently. So for example, yeah, that's the sailboat exercise. If you have done agile development, you most likely have used that. So thinking of what's the rocks in the future, what's the anchor holding you back, what's the wind pushing you forward, or this like comparing your product against a competitor's one. So thinking of, okay, what are the table stakes of must-have things? What's the differentiators or things that will spoil competitors' unique selling points and so forth. It can be this process from going from goal to sub-goals to actual if-then actions. As said, it can be the starfish exercise. So it's not about specific methods that you should use in a particular order. It's more like, hey, you should experiment. Don't waste your time. All of these exercises can be done very quickly. But with these exercises, your brain basically is forced to think a bit differently. So instead of just loving your product, you actually question things and test how your thinking actually fits these different methods or different ways of thinking of the problem or product. The last step is priority. Too often, I know that at least game studios or game startups, they focus very much on technical feasibility. So is it hard? Is it easy to do? Should we do it now? Should we do it later? But besides that, you should have the business value considered, which means that yes, you should have the goal, you should have the magic moments of what actually is unique and specific in your product, and why you should prioritize certain features that you are working on. But the third thing you should also have is the user's voice. So when thinking of, okay, should I do like, okay, my example project, like should I do social recommendation or like add friends first? Well, clearly, like, okay, of course you should look at the big picture, but for example, social recommendation, just by putting things in order, there is not much business value in social recommendations, but users really want it. So that will give you also a better understanding of, okay, what have you gathered, like what type of insights have you gathered from the users, and how to use it when prioritizing things that you will be working on. What's the impact to that process? But that's basically it. That's my sort of 4 steps process or approach that I suggest you to try out. It's not about adding something new, like, or more complex things to your thinking. It's more about, instead of just saying that, you know, there is a global market of 100 millions and our share can be like whatever, half of that. That doesn't mean anything. But if you actually think a bit more in detail what it actually means and what's the actual value or focus or thing that you should be working on in order to succeed, that's more useful and more valuable approach for you. But that's my brief walkthrough of the steps. I'm not going to read through the summary, but there are many things to think about, basically focusing on those 4 steps. Get out of the routine loops. But that's about it. Thank you.